many of you know Noy personally, but let me just say for those who don't that Noy is the founder and director of the Theosophical Society in Canton, Ohio Study Center. So although he's not a member of the T.S.A. in Detroit and not in Michigan right now, he's coming to us via Zoom from Canton, Ohio. Noy is also the district director for the Central District of the Theosophical Society in America. And he attends, and one of his duties is to attend periodic meetings as a member of the board of directors of the Theosophical Society in America in Wheaton, Illinois. And he also travels around the Central District, which is the Midwest. And under ordinary circumstances, he would be here live with us in Berkeley at the T.S.A. in Detroit. And so this is the next best thing, having him on Zoom. Tonight, he's going to speak about self-development and the 7 principles. So Noy, welcome. Thank you for being with us. And we're so glad to see you.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Thank you, Theosophical Society in Detroit, for welcoming and having me this evening. I'll pull up a share screen here. Just give me a moment. Okay. Can everyone see that? Well, everyone's on mute. All right. Well, tonight we'll be talking about self-development in light of the 7 principles of Theosophy. And so we'll first go by explaining the principles themselves, and then afterwards we will explore a way to develop ourselves with those principles or in light of. Let's see. Okay, what are we? Are we a body, just energy and matter? Perhaps we have a mind, maybe we're consciousness, a soul. How about a spirit? So these are a lot of the common qualities that different systems, secular or religious or philosophical, say that we are composed of in different aspects and maybe different wording as well. However, in the Theosophical teachings, we're taught that we are composed of 7 principles. And starting from the more closer to the source of unity, and when we talk about higher and lower, these are not locations, these are subtleties. Everything's here. So we are universal spirit. Well, we'll get into all the particulars in a moment. A soul, mind, passions, desires, emotions, life energy, and the physical body. Now, typically we think of evolution, we think of the physical evolution. The Oxford American Dictionary defines evolution as the gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. And of course, this was considering physical evolution. However, in the Theosophical teachings, we also are learn and consider spiritual evolution. So we'll get into that here. And this is a quote from the Theosophical Glossary. Blavatsky tells us, life is from a spiritual potency above the whole. So just to give us consideration of the thought that we're starting from more of a spiritual source, where this spiritual potency interpenetrates and goes down throughout the principles, and we'll talk about how that works. The subtle and higher precedes the denser and the lower. So we are coming from the source of the absolute, the one life, this absolute unity. And gradually and progressively, we reach different levels of differentiation in our consciousness and our vehicles and our bodies. Human beings stand at the epicenter of spirit's descent and ensuing upward ascent toward awakening, enlightenment, illumination, unity, and higher evolution. And this is the goal of the spiritual life. And in light of theosophical evolution, we are taught that this is the route for mankind in general as well. So we can practice this in this lifetime, and we also participate in this through the evolution of humanity. And Blavatsky tells us, although for purposes of study, we divide the field of esoteric science into various aspects, it must constantly be reaffirmed that the aspects are facets of unity. The moment one lets this idea slip from the mind, the idea of separation supervenes, and the study loses its value. So we must remember that when talking about our different qualities and principles, that we also keep unity in mind, that all of these principles, they're not necessarily separate from one another. And another thing I want to mention here is that we are speaking about concepts. And so in this way, maybe perhaps we shouldn't be too caught on one structuring or one particular interpretation of this system. And I say this to preface that I'll be sharing the original system as documented by HPB in the earlier years, as well as the Mahatmas. So this is not to say for those adept into the theosophical teachings, some of the principles I would just say are numbered differently. But for what we're talking about here, I think the original numbering system fits in quite well. And this is our co-founder of the Theosophical Society, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. I just wanted to include this photo because we are picking up from what she taught us through the ancient wisdom of Theosophy. And I really enjoyed this colorized photograph of her as well. All right. So the easiest principle to get into would be the physical body. This is the densest human principle, and it's the vehicle that we're all familiar with. Sometimes we actually believe ourselves to be this human body, but we are definitely much more than just this body itself. So that would be everything that comes with physical material existence, with our senses and all. The body, it acts as a vehicle for all of the higher principles during life. Infusing this body with life is the prana. We could also think of this as life energy, life force, and vitality. In some theosophical numbering system, this would be number 3. This is one of the differences I mentioned earlier, but I'm sticking to number 2 for tonight. And Blavatsky tells us that prana, or life, is strictly speaking the radiating force or energy of Atma, Atma being the universal spiritual essence. As a universal life and the one self, it's lower, or rather, in its effects, more physical, because manifesting aspect. So it's the manifesting aspect of the Atma. Prana, or life, permeates the whole being of the objective universe, and it's called a principle only because it is an indispensable factor and the deus ex machina of the living man. So the deus machina, ex machina, can be thought of as almost like the miraculous mechanism that gives animation and life to the universe. So we're not talking in miraculous terms, so we'll call that prana. And the third principle is the astral body, traditionally known as the lingua sharira. One aspect of this quality of ours is it acts as an etheric framework upon which the physical body takes form. That's why in some systems it's called the etheric double. But there's a lot of nuances and intricacies and different ways to look at these qualities and principles. But for this talk, we're strictly looking at it from the astral body point of view. And this astral body is associated with the capacity to experience sensations and emotions. Something we can think about the astral body is that it's not actually, okay, maybe we might get the idea. Was that? Oh, sorry, distracted myself. So we actually start, not start, but before the physical body, the astral body comes before the physical body. So we have our astral body, the etheric double, and physical material and matter trying to create this physical body, just to give a sense of it that way. And through its subtle nature, it connects the physical aspect of ourselves with the more intangible sensations and emotions that we can experience. Our fourth principle, the animal soul, also known as the Kama Rupa. It is the raw instincts and animalistic desires and carnal passions. So these are things like really driven towards survival. So this could be strong survival instinct with fight or flight, and the lusts carnally to procreate, and everything pretty much associated with the body and what it means to be a carnal being. Blavatsky tells us that the animal soul is the seat of animal desires and passions. This is the center of the animal man, where lies the line of demarcation, which separates the mortal man from the immortal entity. The fifth principle that makes up who we are would be the mind principle, also known as the manas. So the manas is the mind principle. It's the intelligence. It's the origin of our thoughts. And it's also the source of ego or ego, the source of I-ness. Blavatsky in the Theosophical Glossary tells us that the mental faculty which makes of a man an intelligent and moral being and distinguishes him from the mere animal. So the difference between us and the animal world per se, I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but just the ability and capacity to have different levels of thoughts and realizations. Not to say that animals aren't sentient thinking beings, not saying that at all. Blavatsky also tells us that the esoteric philosophy teaches the existence of two egos in man, the mortal or personal, and the higher, the divine or impersonal, calling the former personality and the latter individuality. So we will show in graphic demonstration how these two parts of ourselves are differentiated. And in the collected writings, Blavatsky tells us that manas, descending to a plane of differentiation, it emanates a ray, which is itself which it can only manifest through the personality already differentiated. This ray is the lower manas. Now that's a mouthful there, so we can just say that for what we're talking about here is the lower mind. The manas comes through subtleties of differentiation and works through our individual personalities. Now, this is who we are as people and as we mostly think of ourselves. So the lower mind is associated with the lower ego, and it's also associated with the kama manas. So the kama is the desire, passion seeds in conjunction with the mind. This part of ourselves encapsulates our ideas and our concrete thoughts. So this is our reasoning processes, our mental conceptualizations, and everything we go through mentally. And this part of ourself in theosophical teachings, we're taught that it is mortal and it does not reincarnate. And once again, we'll get into graphic detail of these, which will make it a little easier to understand. And going on to the higher mind, which is our second part of the manas principle. Esoterically, however, it means when unqualified, the higher ego, or the sentient reincarnating principle in man. When qualified, it is called by Theosophists Buddhi manas, or the spiritual soul. So this is our higher mind, higher ego, and also in theosophical terms, the Buddhi manas. And we'll get into more detail about the Buddhic principle in a moment. So these are more of the ideals and abstract thoughts. So these are a more pure essence of mental mind matter, mind thoughts, ideas. These are not particulars. So these are like archetypes and whatnot. And this higher mind is immortal, or eternal, I should say, and reincarnates. It's our reincarnating aspect. And the sixth principle, often called the spiritual soul, or the Buddhi. Now, the Buddhic principle, the word is rooted in Sanskrit from Bud, like the Buddha. So this would be awakening and enlightenment. But here in Theosophy, it's also often considered the intuitive principle. So as far as we're talking about coming from the source of the absolute or the Atmic plane, the Buddhic principle is the first differentiation of the one. It's the vehicle of Atma reflecting the ray from the absolute. So this is a universal principle. There's not my Buddhic principle and your Buddhic principle. This is one universal principle. And what draws us into a differentiated individual is the manas. So here we're getting into more universal concepts. In humans, the buddhi is the spiritual soul and is associated with intuition. And finally, our seventh principle is the universal spirits, or the Atma. It is a ray from the absolute, and it is the divine spark and higher self within humans. Blavatsky tells us in the collected writings that the seventh principle is not a human, but a universal principle in which man participates. Man here is meant for all of humanity, not gender specific. And talking more about this principle, but so does equally every physical and subjective atom, and also every blade of grass, and everything that lives or is in space, whether it is sensible of it or not. So everything shares the Atmic principle. And to put this graphically, to make it a little easier here, the universal spirit can be thought of as divine oneness, Our spiritual soul can be thought of as intuition, the mind, intelligence, thoughts, and ego or identity. The animal soul can be thought of as our desires and passions. The astral body, also known as the etheric double. The prana, the vital life force. And the physical body, the vehicle of all of the principles. Now here's a line separating our principles to kind of show us what we were talking about earlier with our permanent and non-permanent aspects of ourselves. So the bottom part here, the physical body, our prana, the astral body, the etheric double, and the animal soul, all of this can be thought of as temporary, and we call that the lower quaternary. It's also known as our personality. So this is what our environments, our upbringing, our experiences, all of our knowledge and our likes and our dislikes, everything about us that makes us a person. In theosophical teachings, we consider this part of ourselves very temporary in the scheme of longer existence. So sometimes the thought of losing the sense of who we are as people and not believing that it's permanent and will live on, sometimes scary, but when we start to look deeper into it, it really makes a lot of sense. See the top three here: the mind, the spiritual soul, and the universal spirit, called the upper triad, and that's our individuality. So we call it the individuality because in the sense of the higher planes and the closer to source and unity, this is the first units. This would be like the first unit that makes us as a reincarnating eternal being. So our universal spirits, in conjunction with our spiritual soul, in conjunction with our higher mind, this is who we truly are, and this is who we are through bringing out throughout the lives that we live. We bring that with us, and everything in the lower quaternary is who we develop as in that life, all temporary. So spiritual evolution unfolds through the cyclical reincarnation of immortal individuality that is known as the higher ego or triple monad, the upper triad. So those are also common phrases for what we were talking about a moment ago with the upper three principles. We can become active participants in our own spiritual evolution and also help to improve the condition and quality of the mortal life of our own personality and lower ego. Now, what I'm saying here and what I'm proposing is that looking at the 7 principles as they stand can be used as almost, I would say, a path of initiation. So this could lead us into spiritual self-transformation and growth. And we'll see how we can do that by the guidepost of the 7 principles. As all is a unity, each principle affects the other principles. Positively developing one principle will help in the development of other principles. So this is just to say that in the spiritual path, when we improve one thing of ourselves, it definitely helps all of the other principles because they are not isolated from one another. And just to re-articulate that the principles, they are not, they're not principles that are somewhere else or one above the other. They're all interpenetrating. So they're all occupying the same space. The only difference there is the subtlety. Sometimes that's known as, it could be known as vibration or densities. All right, starting down the path here, we start with the physical body. And we can take care of this physical body through proper nutrition, cleanliness, proper rest, moderate exercise, and stretching. So taking general care of the overall health and well-being of the physical body. What's very interesting about this is during the Buddha's path of enlightenment, he went through different schools of thought and different disciplines and different trainings. And prior, really close to his moment of enlightenment, he was taking a path of self-mortification and denying the body and really being uncomfortable and starvation and left the body to the elements and all of that kind of thing. And at the brink of almost death and coming back from that torture that he inflicted upon his physical body, upon his enlightenment, he realized that denying the body of its well-being and its caretaking is actually detrimental to the spiritual path. It's a lot of times our subtle bodies and our spiritual aspects of ourselves, they're easier to focus upon, and our disciplines are easier to manage if we are in good health. And that's something that we cannot always control, especially with the way the world is today. You know, we're all tied up in this universal karma. So even if one of us are fully GMO free and vegan and, you know, as healthy as we can be, there's too much out there in the world to really be separate from all of that. So we see that even people that live some of the best lifestyles, they still come up with illness and disease as well. And so that pretty much tells us that, yeah, we got a lot of work to do as far as globally and collectively as a species. So the vital life force principle, Prana, we can pick up disciplines like Tai Chi. So this is a martial art that is associated with fluid movements and the channeling of Chi. We could pick up yoga, Hatha yoga, meditative breathing. So these are good exercises. Therapeutic touch and Reiki. So all of these kind of disciplines would be very good to work on our pranic principles. And pretty much any disciplines and practices oriented towards healthy living combined with energy work. And our astral body. Ways that we can work on this principle would be to understand and inquire inwardly as to the creative, destructive, or supportive qualities of our emotions. Make willful decisions to guide the desired quality of our emotions. Dream journaling and lucid dreaming. So lucid dreaming is when we are conscious of our dream states, and either we are observing or we are participating. So this is one practice that we could work on to strengthen our awareness and our consciousness in the astral plane and on with our Lingua Sharira. Dream journaling is a nice way to get that started. A lot of times we sleep and we can't recall our dreams, or we think we were just in blank unconsciousness. But sometimes if we make it a habit and a discipline to have an intention to recall our dreams, remember our dreams, or even participate in our dreams, we make that intention before going to sleep. Sometimes that helps shift that focus of our consciousness there. And then making intentions to write anything down at all once we wake up. So this will help to create a bridge, if you will, from the dream world to the physical world, or at least the waking world, I would say. And when I started here talking about the emotions, because we definitely don't want to kill out emotion. We don't want to deny who we are as people. Really what we want to do is be mindful of our emotions, and we want to make choice. So we don't want to go throughout life and just be slave to our emotions, you know, just letting all of our whims control us. Any little flare up of, let's see, I don't want to dwell on bad words here, you know. So just things like envy and anger, you know, we can be mindful of these things, and we can see them arise in ourselves, and we can see where they came from for as revealing parts of our own selves, so we can work on forgiveness towards others when these what we would call negative emotions. We can see what they teach us about things we need to work on ourselves, instead of just projecting and judging others. And a way we can work on our fourth principle, the animal soul, would be through self-analysis and introspection as to what tugs and appeals to our wants, wishes, desires, passions, motives, and intentions. Because once again, well, at least for myself, I don't promote a system of killing out who we are as people. I think that who we are as people is a wonderful gift of existence, and it's something that I don't want to say that we should just become robots. So we do need to look at our intentions and our wishes and desires. Just like our emotions, we can't let those control us. For example, we were speaking earlier about food and eating. So sometimes we might have the urge, the desire, the passion to eat and eat and eat beyond our capacity. And you know, that's definitely something tied into our animal soul. And we could be mindful of things like that and stop ourselves. But of course, don't deny ourselves of delicious food and tasty things if we're privy to that. So we don't want to deny things, but we want to live with mindful, healthy limitations. Another way to work on the animal soul would be to practice proper avenues to satisfy the lower self. And ways to do this would be exercise, playing sports. This is a way to transmute stress and anger to stay active. Through moderate eating and sleeping. And through mutually respectful and healthy relationships. Now I just use these as examples here because these are things that are associated with being a social creature, almost an animal, if you will. So we have to take care of all these aspects of ourselves and make sure that we're doing things to keep it balanced and keep ourselves fulfilled and satisfied, so that nothing's tugging at us subconsciously and to the lower mind. So to work on the lower mind, we can do things like character building. We can work on our morals and ethics. So this would be the way we treat other people and interact in society, but also our moral compass of what we take to be at least subjectively right and wrong. Another way to satisfy the lower mind would be to learn new things, see new things, meet new people. We could also travel. Travel is a great thing, but unfortunately not right now. No travel. Have enjoyable discussions with others. As I mentioned, we are a social creature, and it's wonderful to talk with people about subjects that don't cause suffering. So, stay away from those things that could cause debates, heated debates, and undesirable outcomes through those kind of debates, whether it's ruining friendships or hurting relationships with loved ones and family members. So definitely we are social, but let's, work on nice socializing. It's good for everyone. We can pursue enjoyable activities. So that's all of our hobbies, if it's like making model cars or just any hobby or anything that we find enjoyable, taking pictures, whatnot. Practice mindfulness meditations. So there's lots of different mindfulness meditations, but I would say in general, mindfulness meditations would be to shift your awareness and focus to an object of one of your senses. So we could be very observant of everything that we're seeing. We can be mindful of all of the sounds around us. We can be mindful of the way things make us feel inside, emotionally or intellectually. We could be mindful of the way we react to situations. So just being fully mindful of who we are and how we carry ourselves throughout the day, both outwardly and inwardly. And working on the higher mind, we can do such things as pursue natural born talents, skills, and gifts. Now, I think for the most part, all of us are born with talents, skills, and gifts to some extent. And I think sometimes we don't nurture those, or we even cause blockages where we maybe don't pursue things because of fears or stigmas or what other people might think. But things that we are really good at and we feel a natural inclination towards, these are things that are good for us to pursue. We can strive towards higher ideals, such as love and compassion. Another way to help the higher mind would be to meditate upon concepts such as interconnectedness. So interconnectedness would be thinking about how everything's related to one another, how nothing is sovereign, how everything has an impact upon everything else. So we can spend time really dwelling upon that. Even just looking around the room we occupy, everything that's handcrafted or machine manufactured, it doesn't matter. We can think about, where we bought it, the people that made it, where all the natural resources came from, all the universal processes that made those compounds and elements. So, interconnectedness thought can really take us very far. We could think of non-permanence. So non-permanence is that everything is in constant motion and constant change. So nothing lasts forever, and we can see that just looking around. Everything's constantly evolving, changing, moving. And we can also think about some of the immutable laws. And immutable are laws that cannot be broken or changed. So these would be things like periodicity. So periodicity, we can think of that as great cycles, just cycles in general. So this would be the coming and going of stars, galaxies, and universes. This could be thought of as our waking and sleeping cycles, the cycles of the seasons, all the cycles we see animals and plant life. So we see the immutable law of cycles everywhere we look. Also, Also, a way to develop the higher mind is to dwell on the concepts that reality, it is what it is. And as a personality, I am that I am. So to dwell on these statements in their metaphysical sense, this is to like take away our immediate judgments and our immediate perceptions of things, just to let things be as they are without that mental feedback that's always going on in our minds. Whether if it's some random song or a chore list we have to do, to really settle those thoughts and just to be that consciousness. And our spiritual soul, ways to work on that. Completely lose all sense of self in meditation, prayer, trance, music, dance, art, etc. There's so many avenues to do that, to just totally be engrossed into something we're doing where we lose track of time, we lose track of all of our plans and what we're supposed to do. We're in the moment, and we let go of it all. So to do things like that brings us into this Buddhic plane, because we're not thinking, we're just existing and being. We can withdraw consciousness in meditation from all thoughts, emotions, sensory perceptions, and sense of body, time, and space. This kind of a meditation sometimes can be known as a Samadhi meditation. So this is really withdrawing from all stimuli in all of our mental processes. And so what we're doing here is we're withdrawing further away from the physical world and the outside world, and really getting closer inwardly to that unity and that oneness. We can learn to discern intuitive feelings. That's easier said than done, but it is something we all need to do, and the only way to really do it is to begin those intentions of discerning. So those would be, sometimes we just know if something's right, we just know the way something is. It could be precognition, all kinds of intuitive feelings, but to really discern the difference between that and just a random hunch or a random thought. And finally, in working with our seventh principle, the Atma, or the universal spirits, we acknowledge the divine within yourself. We acknowledge the divine within others. We acknowledge the divine within all. We can meditate upon unity, harmony, and the one life that unifies us all. And definitely service to others. So this is to work in ways that are not self-serving, and they're not selfish, very selfless ways of helping others, and to really work towards that idea of altruism, the greater good. And just to summarize here and recap it all together, so we are kind of drawing to a conclusion here. So just like in a standard or traditional path of initiation, we take care of the physical body. We live a healthy lifestyle. We could work with energy work, energy systems. And with the astral body, we work on the quality of our emotions, and we work on our dreams, being aware of our dreams and being conscious and in control of our dreams. And for the animal soul, we understand our desires and we understand our passions. We don't want to deny anything. We don't want to demonize things because when we do that, instead of understanding things, we are just throwing skeletons in the closet that can come out and get us later. So we really need to understand who we are and know thyself. We have to know who we are. We have to control ourselves. We have to be mindful what's going on within ourselves. And with our mind, we work towards the quality of our thoughts. We work towards learning, and we practice mindfulness. Mindfulness of our words, of our actions, of our reactions, mindful of everything that's going on all around us. Our spiritual soul, we work on our intuition, and we transcend the ego, or should I say the lower ego. We transcend the personality, better word, we transcend the personality, and we really get closer to that spiritual unity. And with the universal spirit, we work on the oneness and the service. Oneness with all of life and existence and service to others. And through this path here, we see that there's really, we go through almost a period of purification and groundwork here. And then after that, we go through the actual work of creating what we want. And then through that, we get the fruit of our labors through spiritual transformation, spiritual self-transformation. And Blavatsky tells us that all men have spiritually and physically the same origin, which is the fundamental teaching of Theosophy. As mankind is essentially of one and the same essence, and that essence is one, infinite, uncreated, and eternal, whether we call it God or nature. Nothing, therefore, can affect one nation or one man without affecting all other nations and all other men. So to sum that all up, in working to develop and improve ourselves, it is hoped that the efforts will not only improve our own lives, but will also go on to help and improve the lives of others. And if we work on each of the principles that Theosophy teaches us about ourselves, it does act as a path of spiritual self-transformation to allow us to get closer to the truth and the true essence of who we are, which is that Atmic principle, that Atma, that universal oneness. And once we do that, through correspondence, our good attitude and our loving compassion nature and the charity and good deeds that we do, the way we live our individual lives will definitely help everyone we encounter, everyone we walk past down a street, and we could just offer them a smile. We walk into a room and fill it with joy and happiness. So it doesn't always have to be just about opening up a pocketbook, but just living our lives according to a spiritual path can reciprocate a wonderful chain reaction to help improve the world. And this is definitely what we hope for in our personal spiritual paths. They are not self-serving, and they are not to bring us any status above others or we're not looking to develop powers or anything like that to make us special. The essence of the spiritual path is to create a better harmony and a better unity with the world, both inside and outside. And with that concludes this evening's talk.
Thank you, Noy. You gave us a wonderful overview of how to live our lives in a mere hour. It was excellent work. Thank you. Does anybody, I'm sure somebody has questions or a comment about any part of Noy's talk. You know, try to get a gallery view here so I can see everybody.
I have a question.
Justin.
Hey, Justin.
What's going on, Noy? I appreciate the presentation. There was a part that you were breaking down like the lower four principles versus the upper triad, and the thought about karma came to me, and I was just curious if you or anyone in the group wanted to think about the idea, like how does karma that's generated by the lower four principles, how does it stick to the upper three principles as it reincarnates, if that's not its true self?
Well, one way we can think about that is that the spiritual part of ourself dips into this world. We die and then we come back. We're talking about the reincarnating part of ourselves. And so in one way we can think of it as the kind of world that we leave and the kind of relationships we developed with people during our normal lives, that goes on to, in one way we can look at it, those will spread on to lots of causes and effects. And, if we're going through linear time, which of course in the more spiritual dimensions, probably time is more flexible, but just thinking in linear concepts here, the kind of world we leave upon death will lead to cause the state of the world that we are birthed into in years to come. So in one way, we can definitely see it in that light.
And just to add to that, from my reading, it's my understanding that there is something called the permanent atom. And it's a difficult concept to understand, and I don't pretend to understand it, but it is discussed in Theosophical literature, and it carries, it's the receptacle of all of our karma, and it carries over from incarnation to incarnation. So that this is kind of a metaphysical construct, to call it a permanent atom, because it certainly doesn't relate to the material world. It is something beyond the materiality. So it doesn't have form in the sense that we think of material objects, but nevertheless, it's called a permanent atom that carries our karma from life to life. And you can find it, information about it, probably by looking on Theosophy Wiki for a quick overview. And then in the Theosophical Encyclopedia, which is a thick volume that has all kinds of theosophical terms and information in it.
Thanks for that.
That was a great question, Justin. Good question.
Thank you for both of your responses. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question or comment?
I just wanted to say that I'm very thankful for this layout. So thank you so much for inviting me. I usually thought as I went throughout my day, so what is my goal for today? And I always think that it's like the balance of mind, body, spirit. And then thinking it in a simple 3-way, I was probably not aiming at all throughout the day. So now it's like more of a working towards 7, not only 3. So this would be a very nice, more simpler guide for me to think throughout the day for that daily goal that I set for myself almost every day. not quite achieve it most days, but it's a way to think of it in a more simple, longer way of things to work on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. I'm glad that helps to put some things into perspective, and my apologies if it adds a greater responsibility, because the spiritual path does ask of us a great responsibility and the way we live our lives. So we are not scot-free. Things we do have consequences. Thoughts are things, emotions are things, and we reap what we put out there.
Yes, and not only responsibility, there has to be accountability too. So yes, by all means, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. I
Sure.
thought of something else to add to Justin's question and Noy's comment. Karma is carried in our genes, so that our genetic structure is showing us our karma, at least our physical and maybe emotional karma. So that's one way that karma is carried from life to life. And karma is a very mysterious subject. And I think the master said it's the hardest subject to understand, and we won't really understand it until we reach their level.
Yeah, definitely. Great talks could be given about karma and still barely touch the tip of the iceberg. But to piggyback on what you mentioned, there are different karmas at play, and they're all working all at once, I would say. So there is a type of karma, as Mary Jo spoke of, involved with our genes and the DNA of the lineage we come from, those experiences of all of our ancestors and direct relatives. So that comes through our bodies as a genetic karma. And then we have almost this social karma where everything that happens in society affects everyone else. So we're dealing with a social karma in the world. And then we have, going further and further, like cosmic types of karma going on with our solar system and the galaxies. Even to further, to elaborate a little bit deeper, is like the spiritual karmas as well. So our higher qualities that we develop in life, what we call higher, so that would be the more abstract and the more towards unity. So those types of qualities, they stay with our reincarnating aspects. So the good parts, the parts that would be very beneficial to a spiritual path and beneficial to the world. So those kind of things follow us with our, I guess we could call that our reincarnating self. So there's some karma tied up in there with the causal body. This is getting into more technical terms, but so yeah, it can go very, very elaborate into deeper realms of explanation, but we'll stay basic there.
Yusef? Yusef, you're muted. Yusef?
We can't hear you still.
No.
It's the little microphone thing in the bottom left.
Can you unmute him, Randy?
I can only request that he unmute.
Oh,
but,
okay. Okay.
Did he hear you?
Yusef, can you hear us?
He's
Can you unmute everybody temporarily?
Yeah.
Yeah. There he goes.
Yeah, sorry
Got
about
it.
that.
It's
I lost the whole screen.
Oh,
I'm 85, so you gotta forgive me for my technology. Noy, that was really wonderful. You know, I've been connected to T.S. in a loose way, sort of on and off, but for over 30 years, but I've never got into the body of the material, except for little brochures that are on the table at the T.S. Office in Berkeley. But I just realized that what you just said was the speech that I gave to T.S. On their last day in person. I think that was in March. I just got back from California, and they asked me to fill in on that one day. And I hope that's still online. I don't know if it is. If it is, I'd like to know how to see it. But in my presentation, I spoke about the human nature. People say, well, it's human nature. And I say, humans are the only creatures that can transcend their nature. And we have two natures. One is the animal and the other is the divine. So, and then I went on from there. And that's precisely what you said, Noy. The part about karma, really, I call it consciousness. When we mistreat someone, when we do something we know we shouldn't have, it embeds in our consciousness. And I don't believe in punitive punishment like prisons and hangings and things like that. But I believe that there is a thing called restorative justice. So the consciousness, our conscience, begins to bother us, even subliminally. And that's when we trip ourselves up and we say, what goes around comes around. So we trip ourselves in our own conscience until we make up for that, that being kind and caring and kind of thing. So I'm grateful to see this presentation, and I'd like to know when I can get to see it again and send it to others online. Thank you, Noy, and thank you, T.S.
Thank you, Yusef.
Anybody else with a comment or question for Noy? Go ahead.
For sake of just, asking impossible questions, like, the nature of karma or something similarly challenging. One of the things that I've been interested in lately, which I'm very curious to hear your opinions about, is the relationship between two terms that I think people use synonymously, and I'm not sure if they are or not. It's a question to me. The terms are mindfulness and attention, because they're clearly related. But I'm curious, like, do you know of any intelligent way for me to distinguish between the two? And if there's anything in the theosophical literature that, I should look into?
I myself am not familiar with anything theosophically specifically related to those two terms. However, just with myself, I would personally say that attention would be more of a being aware or conscious of something, where a mindfulness would be more of encapsulating a greater totality of that observation. So we can be attentive to a song, but to be mindful would to be more immersed into it. I guess that's the best way that comes to me right now. If anyone else wants to add to that, it'd be a good time to pass the mic.
Yeah, the possible question. Sorry.
Yeah. But that's why we're here. It's great to dig into those harder to answer questions.
Daya has a comment.
I was just gonna try to refresh my memory, but in the yogic tradition, there are the stages of meditation, the stages, how the mind moves. And it starts with, I think it's pratyahara, where you withdraw, and it's a way of filtering out, so to speak. You know, and you're looking at TV, and in the background, somebody is passing the cars out on the street. So you may know that it's out on the street passing, but you don't focus on it. You just withdraw your attention to usually what's on the TV or whatever you're reading. And then after that practice becomes, you can enable that at any time. The ability to concentrate is then brought into focus. So that would be more of your attention being more laser beam, so to speak. And eventually, the way I was taught and have experienced from time to time is the chatter and the dust of the mind starts to just settle down. And so the ease goes from trying to focus that attention, laser beam attention, is effort, very effortful. Sometimes it's very effortful. You have to put a lot of effort into it. But then what happens is that mind, we call it the monkey mind. And in the yogic tradition, it says the mind is like a drunken monkey that's been stung by a scorpio. And it's just jumping all over. So there's focusing, attentiveness, concentration. But then after a while, it settles down. And then it's more easeful. I guess you could call it mindfulness. There's more of an ease of observing. It's almost like you're looking, I don't know, you look at the night sky or something, and it's a pause of waiting to kind of see how things, you're looking for that tiny little star or that tiny little constellation, and your mind just kind of goes into a more easeful, almost passive state of observing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Daya. Beth, you have a comment about
Yeah,
that?
I'm just agreeing with what Daya said, and thinking of the difference perhaps being with mindfulness, it's more diffuse, but yet with your intuition, you can see through that diffusion. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody. And then focus, it's like you choose one aspect of reality, and it can almost be compulsive, if you will. When you see people who do real detailed work, there's strong focus, whereas that diffusion is ignored for the duration of that work. All right. So it's really agreeing with what you said also. I think mindfulness is larger, but yet still there's some kind of I say intuition, you used that word before, that kind of cuts through for the importance of it or the reality of it. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Beth. Yusef?
I'm thinking that also beyond the description about us as individuals, it's what the society does. So for example, this mindfulness, to be able to focus, to meditate, to sit still. Look at the commercials, how they don't have the same photo for more than a second and a half. So constantly, there's constant change. We're being embedded and fed into a hypnotic trance through commercialism to start with, advertising, but in society as in general, the children just are in constant state of, so in other words, what I described in the speech I gave at T.S. was that we're all secondhand people. Everything we know came to us from somebody else, and we believe it. So that I gave him the example: if you were born a twin, an identical twin, and at time of your birth, your twin was taken to China, and now today at this time and age you meet. So you see, there's two different people. So what society teaches us, what we are exposed to, in my understanding, personality is the sum total of experience. So if we go through, creates who we are, and then we have to be able to go into our higher self. That's the part above the animal, and parse out those things and become more caring. Love and compassion. Love and compassion is so important, and that's not taught in the society.
We hope it will be taught more and more
Yeah.
after what we've been through in 2020.
If I get my movie finished, it will be.
Does anybody else have a comment or question for Noy? One thing you said, Noy, stood out in my mind in particular, and that was that developing and focusing on developing one principle will help in the development of others. And I remember reading once that if we take very good care of the physical body and exercise, build the body that way, that we are, and if we're consistent with that for some time, we build willpower. And not only willpower, but a higher kind of will that will help us develop other parts of ourselves, because the will is a quality that we need to use to help develop every one of the principles. So I thought, gee, that's good to know, because there is so much to do to work on every level of ourselves. But if we really work on one in particular, that will help transform and develop other parts of our being. Well, nobody has any other comments? There must be a question brewing in somebody's mind.
Well, not a question, but a comment. Noy, you took on a
yeah.
large and complex subject, boiled it down to its essence, and then put it into words that we could understand in everyday language. So thank you very much.
Glad you noticed that, Glenn. That was the intention there. I'm really concerned with trying to present Theosophy to non-Theosophists, as well as those who are just starting to begin into the studies. We have, within the society, we have lots of wonderful, I would call them scholars. We have some great scholars, some great lecturers. There's some really wonderful classic literature, some great lectures out there. And they really did a great job of going to very detailed technical terms and really getting as deep as possible. And all of that's there. And I try to do something a little outside of that. So thanks for appreciating.
Well, one further comment about the subject is a great many of the words and terms and definitions are from the 18th century. In other words, they are not modern day language that was used. That alone makes it quite difficult to understand.
Definitely. So if we look at the literature of the founders, not only were they using Sanskrit and Buddhist and Hindu words, they were also using Victorian English. So that gives us a great difficulty in trying to really understand what they're saying. And there's lots of times I'll be reading the classical theosophical literature, and the words that I'm not familiar with, I don't even know how to pronounce. So I have to spend time just trying to learn one word, and that takes a lot of time to do that as well. So yeah, we are definitely in a different social and language context than our founders.
There's an excellent book that is relatively modern. It's called Self-Culture in the Light of Occultism. And it was reprinted as a way to self-discovery, written by an Indian man named, last name Chounramany. And Noy, I wonder, are you familiar with that book?
Yes, I am. Yeah, it was so wonderful. He's puts theosophical terms and the ancient wisdom nicely into palatable English. Great author.
Mm-hmm. So that if anybody's looking for a book to read during this time of quarantine, that might be a good one.
Can you
on
repeat
this subject. Well, I'm not sure what they were working on reprinting it a few months ago, and I'm not sure what it's going to be renamed or named as the previous edition. Either a way to self-discovery or self-culture in the light of occultism. And you can find it, order it from the Alcott Library at the Theosophical Society in Wheaton. There it is, Self-Culture. Randy has it. That's the original title of the original edition.
Okay.
If you ask I.K. Chounramany, T.A.I.M.N.I, and if you order it by that title, Alcott Library will know what to send you.
Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else know any other book that would help on this subject?
Well, I'm not familiar with any book, but I would like to do something approaching a smooth glide into encouraging Noy to talk with us about what the Canton Study Center has going on, and perhaps connect some of the people here with some resources that they may not know about at the moment. So Noy, is there anything that you can shamelessly announce or share about what you have coming up?
No, nothing at all at this time. We're just doing, well, anyone would be invited if they wanted to attend our normal regular meetings. We're just holding digitally on Zoom, one meeting a month. So that would be regularly on the second Friday. So the second Friday at 7:30 p.m. And so our study group, we're sticking to core Theosophy, and we work together as a group to understand it, like we were talking about, in our modern language and easy to understand concepts. So we've been working on study work pamphlet books from Wheaton, from their Board of Education. And I think we are really close to moving on to study together Pablo Sender's book, The Evolution of the Higher Consciousness. So those are basically, we just get together and we drill out the theosophical fundamentals.
Is it only once a month?
Yes.
Okay.
Is The Evolution of Higher Consciousness, is that a book?
That is a book published by Full Hot Productions, Pablo Sender and Michelle Sender. And on their website, Full Hot Productions, I'm not sure the full website link, but they included a study, a workbook study for it to go with it as well. So each chapter is broken down into instructions and questions to think about as a group. So they took the time to turn their book into a study workbook.
Yes, and I want to thank Justin who gave me that book. Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome.
So if can anybody attend the Zoom with the Canton Study Center? No,
I would like to, yes.
Yes, it's open to the public. Our primary point of contact is through Facebook. So that would be the Canton Study Center of the Theosophical Society in America. And we put our programming on there. And as well, if people wanted to get email reminders, they could submit their email and we send out links and reminders through email if Facebook isn't a good point of contact for anyone. Oh, I might want to throw that out then. Let's see.
Yeah.
Ohio Theosophy at gmail.com.
Sandy just put a link to it in the chat.
Well,
Okay.
I did for Facebook just now. You could click on that link to go there, but I think Noy was leaving the email address.
Yes. It's Ohio Theosophy at gmail.com. Yep. Chat looks good. Thanks, Sandy.
well, any more comments or questions?
I'd like to just say thank you, Noy. I'm so glad that you were so willing to do this. We did miss seeing you in person. We were supposed to see you, and then everything changed in the world. So this was truly wonderful. And I'm glad that you also brought up Pablo's book, because I think that is very relevant to what you brought up to us today. So I think now is the most important time for all of us to take these things very seriously.
Yeah, it's almost like we're on, or we could use this as like a monastic retreat. So we can use our homes as our places to work on ourselves and to chip away at things that we could improve upon. But of course, for the benefit of helping the world become a little bit of a better place.
And last Friday, Mary Lampierre led a wonderful discussion about that subject and how we have led a retreat this past almost a year, and what we learned from it was very, very helpful.
Yeah, when I was listening to your talk tonight, I thought, this is a wonderful blueprint for doing what we were talking about doing last week. So I'm glad it's going to be out there on YouTube. It was funny, right before I logged in, I was talking to someone who was planning, to do something like this. And I laid out a few things and I thought this would be a wonderful thing to send her for her ideas. This is very nicely laid out. Thank you, Noy.
Thank you. And if anyone wants any of those charts or explanations in their diagram form, you can go ahead and email me as well, and I could send any of those to you. So it could almost be like a little pamphlet thing.
That would be really nice. I would like to see that.
All right.
Well, Noy, thank you so much, especially the fact that it's your birthday. And you
Happy
waved the
birthday.
cake and ice cream for us. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. And I
Well,
hope
I'm glad to
we
be
can do
here.
it again.
Yes. And I really thank everyone, and I appreciate everyone using their valuable time to spend this evening with us here. It's really great to see everyone's faces and to hear everyone speak and to join together in this good uplifting energy. Because when we get together for theosophical thoughts and work, you know, we're building that spiritual bridge with each other as well as amongst our society. So, you know, it's a good thing to meet here, and I'm glad we can do it digitally. And I really hope that sooner than later I could visit you guys in person in Detroit. I'd like that. So thanks for having me.
Too.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Yes.
thoughtfulness. And before everybody goes, I'd like to just say, first, thank you for being here. Thank you to those of you who've already donated to us this evening for this evening's event. If you'd like to donate to us, I shared the link. Well, when I say us, I mean the lodge that we all are gathered under that umbrella. That link is in the chat, so you could just click there and then just go to donate once you go there. We recently had a very large expense fixing the rooftop furnace, so every little bit counts, and we thank you in advance. And I'd like to just list what we have coming up if you haven't already heard. We're doing every other week informal kind of gatherings where we discuss a topic, and one of the members facilitates that. And so we'll have that next week. We don't know what we're going to talk about yet, so we'll figure that one out. And then that's the 4th, December 11th, we have David Zimmerman who will be talking. Also, we don't know that topic quite yet, but we'll always let you know as we go into the week. And then December 18th, we were hoping to try something special and different this year, which still is according to tradition of holding a winter solstice celebration. So we wanted to do that through Zoom, and we're gonna see how we can be creative and make it special. And so, you know, keep that in mind. That's also a Friday, and it would be same time. So, and if you have any ideas to share what we might be able to incorporate through Zoom, please don't hesitate to email anybody. You know, you could email theosadet@gmail.com or me or Mary Jo or Randy, Daya. So.
Sandy,
Yes.
I have a question. Is there a way to make donations that isn't online? I don't put my credit card online.
Well, you could just drop a check off at the lodge or mail a check. And Mary Hawkins does go, and she's so diligent about taking care of these kinds of things. So yeah.
So perhaps attention Mary Hawkins.
Yeah. And I mean, you're welcome to, if you're going to mail it. Yes, just.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And there's a slot in the front door, so you don't even have to go into the building.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I did last time I made a, payment, and it was very easy.
Just dropped it through the slot?
Just dropped it in the slot and didn't have to put my credit card anywhere.
Right, okay, good.
Which is what I'm probably going to do tomorrow.
Yusef, you had your hand up?
For the equinox event, but always when I'm at T.S.A, I usually manage to do the 6 directions, the Native American ritual to the 6 directions, which is always wonderful at the equinox time. So if you want to incorporate that into the program, I'd be glad to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely write that in and talk about it as we try to form the evening. Thank you, Yusef. Wonderful. Well, anything else?
No, everybody needs to leave though. We're all sitting around.
So great to see you all. Thank you.
What am I going to do for the next half hour?
Thank you, everybody, for the
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
See you, Noy. Bye, Mary
Take
Jo.
care.
Rita,
Bye-bye.
Randy.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye. Thank you, Noy.
Thank you.
Bye, Aloma.